Hello, welcome to the Garden Gurus. I'm Joanne Harris. I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend, and it's great to be joining you all for the Garden Gurus live show this Monday morning. We've got an exciting show lined up for you today, and on today's show we'll be talking all things winter. So although the Garden Gurus is taking a break until spring, it doesn't mean your garden needs have to go into hiatus also. Today's show, I'll share my tips on how to prepare your garden for winter. We'll also be checking in with Sue McDougall, who's the director of the Western Australian Botanic Garden, as to what her team is up to in winter at Kings Park. I'll show you my plant of the week, and later we'll share a sneak peek of this Sunday's upcoming Garden Gurus episodes. It's a special episode at that. So get your questions in. I'll try and answer as many as I can. Don't forget to put your state and city for your question. It helps me immensely. And as always, we have plenty of seeds to be won. So make sure you hit that like button. Now let's go straight into the Q&As, to the question and answers. However, I do have one that I wanted to finish off from last week. I had been speaking to somebody, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember who you are, and I'm hoping you're listening. You had a problem with grass going into your garden bed, which is always a really difficult thing, and I suspect it was couch grass. And I was trying to think of the chemical that will help you in that. Now, we don't like to use chemicals a lot in the garden. However, sometimes it's really useful. And Fusilade Forte is the one I was trying to think of. So it's a herbicide, and it's weed control of couch and other grasses. And what you can do with that is you can actually spray this over other plants, and it won't hurt the plants. It'll just get the couch. So I guess it's one of those chemicals that I don't mind using when you've got that difficult, troubled time. So I hope whoever it was I was trying to answer the question to and I couldn't remember it, I hope you're listening this morning. So it's Fusilade. That's Fusilade, Fusilade. Okay, so that's good. Let's move on to some more questions though. All right, so Cherie is in Bunyip in Victoria. And hi, I was after some advice on my jasmine. Is it supposed to look like this? The leaves are turning purple. Yes, that can happen. You've got them in a very small pot, I think, too. So as the weather gets colder, the plants can turn red and purple. What they're doing is they're drawing the nutrients down from the leaves back into the base of the plant to help that. And it's pretty much the cold weather. You can get it sometimes when you're overwatering in cold weather also. So just be careful that you're not overwatering things. It's not a bad thing. The plant will be okay. You often see it on hydrangeas. The leaves start going spotty black, and then they go entirely black and they fall off. And it's the nutrients going down into the root system to survive through the colder time. So don't be too perturbed. But I think you need to look at my advice there on putting it in slightly bigger pots so that it has a better root system and it'll survive those winter days much better. You could do that now. So we move on to, we're back in Perth, and it's Tina. And she's saying, hi there, I have 3 fairly established traveller's palms. 2 are growing normally and 1 throwing out minimal branches. Is there anything I can do apart from using palm fertiliser that I'm using now to encourage it to throw out more branches? There's not really, Tina. I think you could probably make sure that the palm fertiliser that you're using has a good amount of boron in it. Palms like boron to throw a leaf out. If these are in the ground, I would seriously look at what palm fertiliser you're using and make sure you use that through the growing seasons. But also consider that if they're in pots, they may be in a pot that's too small. A palm has a very bulbous and very fibrous root system and needs a good amount of space. So if you're growing them in pots, just check, squeeze the pot and see how tight the plant is in that pot. If it's tight or even tight-ish, I would suggest that you need to take it out. You can remove some of that root system and replant it. But I think you're better off to cut off any of the dead root system and plant it into a bigger pot, and then you'll find that the palm will be a lot happier. So I hope that helps you there, Tina. So we're staying in Perth and we're talking to Jennifer, and she says, my daughter gave me a beautiful succulent in a sandstone carved planter. Can I keep the succulent inside? My daughter has told me to keep it outside. Well, look, Jennifer, succulents can be kept both inside and outside. Especially, look, if you're in I know you're in Perth, but we don't know what suburb. You could be South Perth, where you get a lot more frost. And if that's the case, you're better off to bring it inside, or you'll freeze the plant and it will most likely die. So consider where you are. When you bring it inside, I've actually got 3 in my kitchen, 2 close to my windowsill and 1 just a little bit further back. And they're all going very well in there. In fact, they sit in there summer and winter, and they do quite well. So, yeah, don't hesitate to bring your succulents inside. And if anyone's listening from other parts of the country where you do get frost and do get cold, it's almost imperative that you do bring those inside and keep them out of the frost, because they will freeze. So then we're still in Perth, and we've got a picture from Leith. And my lemon tree is not fruiting. He planted it 2 years ago. It gets lots of morning sunshine. I have used black marble fertilizer on it over the past 2 years, and recently I've given it a good dose of sea salt and used garden leaves for mulch, but not up close to the trunk. Well, that's a smart thing to do, Leith. I also have the same problem with my lime tree. Only difference is the lime tree gets the afternoon sun and is in a pot, while my lemon tree is in the ground. Okay, so to start with, lemon trees, you'll find they can take more than 2 years to start fruiting. They're young, they need a good root system. I know my mandarin didn't fruit until 4 years, and now it's just fantastic. In fact, at the moment, I've had to prop it up because it's so full of fruit. So it could be that you have just got a young tree and it's just waiting to take off. However, in this photo, I can also see quite a number of yellow leaves and veins on the leaves. So I would maybe suggest that you use something more than black marble. I think black marble has a good amount of potassium in it and potash, but it doesn't have a lot of minerals in it. And citrus do like more minerals than I believe that particular fertilizer will give. So you want a good all-round mineral fertilizer. Citrus like it a little more often, and you'll find that a good dose of sea salt or any seaweed extract is a good one to use. Okay, and I think I've answered that. Now, your lime tree is in a pot, and I noticed that in the photo also. And while it's in the pot, it looks like it might actually be a pot that's a little bit too small for it. And if it's losing leaves, I can see you've got yellow on the end of these leaves. That can often be too much water. Now, your pot, it's quite small. The plant's not huge either, but you are going to need to change that relatively soon. I would then like to think that you've got that pot lifted up off the soil so that you've got aeration, so good drainage and aeration. And it looks like from the way the water's showing on there that perhaps part of the pot is under a veranda where it's not getting water and the other is. Otherwise, you've just watered it on half of the plant. But if it is getting that, just be careful that it's not overwatered, especially through this winter time. So maybe look at a different fertilizer. To be honest, I really like the GrowSafe fertilizer. I think it's full of good minerals, also some microbial activity in there that will certainly help your plant. It'll feed the soil and then the soil feeds the plant. Okay, so Dee has a question, and we don't know where Dee's coming from, where she's living, but she needs some grass. Which one is best, and when is the best time of the year to lay it? Well, spring is the good time. Spring right through to probably very early autumn. If you're living in somewhere like Perth, where it's warmer, then probably you could go into, say, mid-autumn, but otherwise it's those months. You don't want to be laying grass when the roots aren't going to take off nicely and quickly for you, which is in the colder months. So I would probably now, the way it looks out there today, I'd probably consider that we don't do it until spring. And which one is the best? That's like asking which coffee is the best, really. I, though, prefer the winter, the soft winter buffalo. It's soft on you. Although it's a running grass, it doesn't, unlike kikuyu, it doesn't end up going 6 foot down and coming up in the middle of your roses or your natives, and then you've got to try and weed it out. And unlike cooch, that just goes everywhere. So winter grass, it's a runner, but it's very easy to keep the edges and to keep the runners from going into your garden. So that's the winter soft buffalo is the one that I really like. Okay, now we're back in Perth and it's Joanne. Hi, Joanne, and she'd like to know if I can tell her, please, how do I save my elephantia plant and what this plant and what the other plant is. So let's start with your elephantia plant. This, to me, looks like it's been overwatered, and they're very easily overwatered. Although they like a lot of water, as the weather gets colder, they certainly don't. You need to pull back on your watering of them. You can see that that's definitely an overwater. So cut that one off and put this somewhere where it's still going to get good moisture, but it's got some warmth about it. Otherwise, you'll find that the cold will certainly do damage to it also. And now the other plant that I saw in your photo, I'm fairly sure is an Antherium. These, and it said, I think, that you just since repotted it 18 months ago. Now, they're very slow growing, but really easy to grow inside. So I'd make sure that this one's inside. It also doesn't like the cold. And doesn't want to be overwatered. In fact, the Antherium is one of the most people grow this. It's inside. It's one of the most popular. I'm trying to find the word. The most popular indoor plants to be grown, and it's very easy to grow. You'll need to feed it well, and I've got one inside. The difference between it not flowering and flowering is really where you place it in the sunshine. So although you don't want it in full sun, in that midday sun beating down on it, early morning sun and afternoon sun, even through a window. I have mine on a piece of furniture that sits under my large window, and I have the plant in under that. So it does get some of the sun, but not that really hot sun. So it likes good light, and it also likes to be well fed. So I feed mine every 6 weeks. And it seems to do quite well, and it'll flower up again for me again, probably around about Christmas time, which is great. Okay, so those are the two plants. Make sure you keep your elephant ears less watered and in a warmer position for winter, and you should do well, Joanne. So we're off to Queensland now, and Basil in Queensland says, can I use my Norfolk Island pine needles for mulch? You can, Basil. They will assist the soil in becoming more acidic, and they are an acidic leaf or needle. So what you want to do is make sure that you have those on acid-loving plants. You don't want to have them on anything that wants a higher pH. Otherwise, it's not going to do very good for it. What happens is the pine needles will mulch away. They'll decompose underneath. So you'll just keep adding those leaves, the needles. Make sure that you've got a good, 40 centimetres, if that, and that will certainly help your plants. And now we're off to Sydney and Dot. And Dot's asking, she saw a jacaranda, a bonsai blue, in one of our episodes a while back. She's in Sydney and would like to know where you can source one. Gosh, I'd love to source one of these. We haven't got them over in West Australia yet, but they can be purchased. I'm pretty sure Garden Express have these. Have a look on your website, ring your local garden centre. They'll know if they're around. If they have them, you'll certainly know. Now, they're quite new to Australia, so I'm not sure where you're going to find them, but ask your garden centre in your state and they can help it. Or give Garden Express, go onto their email and give them a call and see if they have any left. Thanks, Dot. I look forward to having one of those myself, that's for sure. Look, this morning we talked about it being all about winter, and it's now we're heading into winter well and truly. So we've got this great interview happening with Sue McDougall. She's here with us now. Sue is the director of the Western Australian Botanic Garden, and she's here to give us the scoop on what her team is up to this winter in Kings Park. Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, so lovely to hear your voice and see you, Joe. Haven't talked to you for ages. I mean, having been very involved in garden centres for a long time, we often met. And I know you only live down the hill from where I live, but it just times sometimes don't cross. So gorgeous, gorgeous to chat to you again today on this beautiful winter day.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Sue. We've known each other almost 30 years now. You were in an amazing garden centre that you ran at the time in the hills. And then I've watched you just move so fast and so wonderfully into the horticultural and then landscaping. In the landscaping, sorry, I've got something happening technical here, and it's
That's
disrupting.
okay. That's
Me.
okay. Don't mind at all. I mean, being a landscape architect, that's exactly it. Having that broad understanding, and I say that often, Joe. That maybe was my midlife crisis going back to uni and studying landscape architecture. But what it has done is being able to help me, I think, with horticulture. And when I first started landscape architecture, there wasn't a real focus on the reason I really wanted to do it was have that horticulture background and that passion of plants being prominent. And that time when I first started landscape architecture, it wasn't. It was all about the hard landscaping and the treatments and what we would do. And I think it's so exciting because we've done a full circle. There's a lot of focus with landscape architects now how important the green space is. We've changed when I went back to uni in 2008. So within that time, we've got now an environmental message, a green space message, how important that health and well-being is. And I think I feel really excited to be part of that. I mean, you're part of it as part of your garden centre, and then just that understanding of what we can do and the difference we can make for that green space. That small space doesn't have to be big. When we first started in garden centre, everyone had a backyard, didn't they? I mean, 30 years ago, everyone had a backyard, and it'd be horrified if anybody would be thinking about planting or even living in an apartment. And now it's just the norm. It's making use of the space. And how heartening is it to see indoor plants being focus again and the next generation growing them? And in my daughter's case, don't dare say that I think, they forget to water them. And I'm saying water helps. One of them overwaters, one of them underwaters. But, learning those skills, understanding how important it is, those green spaces. And, you would be heartened to see that, having that
Oh,
generation of plants we take for
absolutely.
granted with our knowledge. And so, we are so lucky to be in this industry at this
Look,
time.
I drive around Guildford and Bassendean where I live, and I see all the trees, and I go, I sold them that. I know that, and I see it developing, and I love it. I look out over my veranda that looks up over the hills, and I see the treetops coming back in, and I know that we're doing the right thing. I love this industry, and I know you do also. So you've moved into a position that I think Perth and the world, in fact, is very lucky to have you there, Sue.
Oh,
I
thank you.
Yeah, I really believe that strongly. You are a woman of passion. You're very well, you're so knowledgeable when it comes to plants. So, yeah, we're lucky in Perth to have you here to be developing further and further and to bringing that passion into something like Kings Park. So, tell us,
So
what is your
lucky.
team
Oh, so
doing? You know,
I'm so lucky to be part of it. I feel very privileged, and every day people say, "Oh, it can't be that good." I'm going, "No, it actually is." So my
yeah,
title is the director of the West Australian Botanic Garden, and within that, I get to the Horticulture and Living Collection Directorate. So within that directorate, I look after arboriculture. So I've got a fantastic, passionate team looking after all the trees and the development of the trees and caring for the trees. The
yeah,
collection of trees we have. I have the team for the display gardens. So The West Australian Botanic Garden is totally focused. It's just over 50 years old, and it's totally focused on West Australian species. So collections of West Australian species. I also have the living collections management, which includes the nursery and also the collections management, and also the seed selection and the seed bank that we have here at Kings Park, and the work we do through conservation. Our living collection, we have plants we're just putting them from the glasshouse at the moment, into the glasshouse at the moment from the Kimberley, from the dry area, to keep them away from the cold weather. So within that, there's the nursery and growing the living collection. And I also have the plant breeding program under my directorate. So that's the Anagaxanthus program. And of course, there's been the high profile blue kangaroo paw released. But within that, we also have a Camelorsium breeding program, so for cut flowers. So that's an international market. We've just gone through the process of registering plant breeders' rights for cut flowers. I mean, millions and millions of stems, billions of stems probably, of waxes are sold across the world for cut flowers. We're involved in that. We've also just started a new Eremophila breeding program. So part of the landscape resilience and climate change thinking is being able to breed plants that are going to use less water, are disease resistant and more tolerant. And also I've got horticultural development under my directorate also, and that's all the science-based projects that we've got. So chloritic decline for our trees, what happens to the environment when we've got alkaline water and alkaline soil. So we have a science-based program with that. Biosecurity is a big thing. And also international consultancy that comes with that. So there's a lot of work happening in the Middle East at the moment. So that's what I get to look after every day, Joe, and talk.
Only.
I know.
Is that all you deal with?
Yeah, exactly. So that focus on West Australian species, I just get so passionate about our flora we have in WA and how we can promote that for international and local visitors, and how we can tell that story no matter where you come in Australia, how important waterways gardens are, how important that conservation, ex situ conservation is. So one of the big features of our West Australian Botanic Garden is the conservation garden, where we take some of the species that are rare and threatened and develop ways we can grow it. So we have it conserved in our seed bank, we'll have it conserved in our tissue culture, and also we'll have a living collection and also part of a display. So how we manage that so that we can conserve it. One high profile plant that many of our viewers around Australia, and even if we've got international viewers, might know, is the Eremophila nivea. So that in its natural space, that's a rare and endangered plant, but being able to bring it into cultivation and have it in conservation as part of the conservation, we can then be able to save it. And I think that's one of the roles botanic gardens are discovering across the world, how important spending time using their science, using their skills to be able to conserve our flora. But it's not just one species, it's whole ecosystems, how important that is and what we can do. At the moment, I get the good jobs. Like at the moment, we've got a crew collecting target species in the Kimberley for the threat, because of the threat of Myrtle Rust. So Myrtle Rust is a pathogen that's come right down the east coast, and our listeners from the east, our viewers from on the east coast, will understand exactly what Myrtle Rust can do. It's devastating. We've been lucky enough into Western Australia is that we've managed to keep it out with biosecurity, strong biosecurity protocol we have also, and quarantining. I mean, as a nursery owner, it's difficult because there's a lot of things that you couldn't get. But because of the Myrtle Rust and because of it was identified as a threat, we have so far managed to keep it out of WA. And it was identified as being within 100 kilometres to the border of in the Northern Territory, because it's been found in all the other states except South Australia and Western Australia. And we have got a team of 6 up in the Kimberley at the moment collecting 59 target species to conserve, because within our seed bank and within our living collection, we've found that those species are underrepresented. So we've got lots of southwest species because it's easy to get to. So this year we undertook a project to be able to conserve those target species for the future. We never know how they're going to react with myrtle rust, but all the evidence that's happening and we can see is causing a problem. So I get to do all those exciting jobs, Jo. So
So
I'm very,
how many
very lucky and
staff?
privileged.
Sorry, Sue. How many staff do you have there? I mean, this is a huge job that you're overseeing, let
Yeah,
alone
yeah.
um, taking it through. So, how many staff do you have there at Kings Park at the
So
Botanical
we
Garden?
rely on totally, so the whole BGPA, so Botanic Gardens and Parks Authority, which includes the park management officers, the communication team, is over 100. I have about 40 full-time equivalents to look after, which of course many of those are part-time, so probably 50, 55 of my team to look after. And then, of course, our Botanic Garden relies heavily on Friends of Kings Park and our volunteers. And so their input to our operations is invaluable. And we couldn't do what we do without the volunteers. They often do a lot of the hard yards and the hard work. And so I would say within my team of 55 people, who some are full-time, some are part-time, I am truly so lucky with
Yeah.
the dedication and the just the
Quality.
knowledge they have for Jo,
Yeah.
just the knowledge of and the passion for West Australian plants is just second to none. And I just I'm so inspired by our team. We've had our challenges, as every other botanic garden's had in
Mm.
Australia and across the world, is impacted by COVID, of course. Every business it has been. So this year it's been a challenge to then get what we need, the program of what we need to get done on time. But I just keep saying to my team, look, we do what we can do, and the planting will happen. Our nursery grows 40,000 plants for the Botanic Garden. So those species, that's part of the living collection replacement, but also that's for bushland in Kings Park and Bold Park, because Kings Park manages Bold Park also, but also for the display garden. So the West Australian Botanic Garden is being planted up as we speak. So can I say the team last year put some incredible work into trialing and testing new varieties. So anyone who visits Kings Park this year will see that and see some of the new varieties we've replanted. It was a hard summer, there's no denying that. Some of our species did get knocked around, but we've just gone through and planted tens of thousands of new plants going in. So excited to see how they
That's
go.
exciting. So I was there just a few weeks ago. One of our team members got married and married in Kings Park, which was beautiful. And I
Isn't it?
took a walk around, and especially some of the ex situ gardens where you've got the rare and endangered species. They're just amazing. But one of the things I find with Kings Park is that you can go 3 or 4 times in the year and it look very different each time. So it's not a place that you want to go just once. You want to go a number of times. So through winter, it's still a good time to go also. You've got, well, I'm assuming at the moment you've got things like thryptomines and you've got lots of flowering things at the moment, right?
There's so many Banksias coming into flower. There's the grevilleas, there's the thryptomines, there's just the foliage is really, this is beautiful new
Mm,
foliage on plants are
yeah,
looking absolutely stunning. So you're right, Jo. It's not something that you just say, oh, I've been to Kings Park and then I've done. It's a living landscape, it's a living collection, and it changes. And we find that we'll look at it and assess it and think, well, this year this one hasn't done so well, this particular species not just done so well, or this one's done brilliantly. So replanting with a heap of anigaxanthus, of course. There's just starting to look amazing. And we found this year is actually really interesting. We've still got some Physofolia in flower. I mean, this year
yeah.
has
So it's
has
extended.
yeah, it's sort of flowered again. So you can never we can never take the natural landscape for granted, can we? I don't think. I
Absolutely
think
not.
that's
Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. So mark it in your calendar, mark it in time to
Yeah.
come to Kings Park regularly. It is the most visited place. It's the thing that I look at and think, wow, um, just to be part of and just changing and seeing it. And I see you've got a celebrations kangaroo paw there too. So yay!
We do. Well, I just figured that I would have to put something into the plant of the week, and I decided I'd tie it in with Kings Park
Oh,
and talk
treasure.
about the kangaroo paws. I've spoken about the grevilleas that you've developed also there, and I thought, well, we'll do the kangaroo paws. I've
And
also got, you can see a little bit of black spot happening on the side here too, black
oh,
ink spot. But I thought that was a good thing to talk
yeah.
about for winter maintenance anyway. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
think, and one of the exciting things about the grevilleas, while you're talking about that, there's so many new varieties coming through that haven't even been named yet, but they are hardy for climate, do beautifully in pots. So when I visited Mifkas this year, one of the things that really was heartening was to see the number of Australian plant species, so not just West Australian species, but Australian plant species that were included in those landscapes. And I think we're getting it right, aren't we, Joe? We're understanding
yeah,
how important and how
yeah,
easy those plants are to grow and how they grow in pots, they grow in small spaces, and why
yeah.
not use our, um, if you've got a plant that's uh, will thrive on 2 days a week watering, and you've got one that you need to water every day, well, what are we going
What's
to
your
put?
choice? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. So,
And there are
yeah,
some of those plants that are harder to look after that don't take our weather, and you can use those, but you need to
yes,
use them in a pot somewhere where you can, whereas you can fill your garden with plants, and it's going to get more and more over the years whilst we've got someone like you in that position where we're going to get more and more plants. So I've really enjoyed listening to you this
thanks,
morning.
Joe.
I know that the viewers out there will get some great ideas out of it. If you're in Perth, get down to the Kings Park. It's well worth it. I'll be seeing you next week. I think you're talking at a breakfast that I'm going to.
I
Yeah,
am. I look forward to that very much. And I think
yeah.
while we're talking, we must think about the people on the East Coast. I know in Sydney they're flooded out, Joe. So we talk about dry climate, and I know in Sydney it has been so wet. So it's the extremes across Australia, isn't it? And so,
Oh, it really is. We're going to talk a little bit about what we can do in our garden for winter.
yeah,
And I've had to break it into three different areas because you're quite right, it's so different all across Australia. But it's
yeah,
an exciting thing to do.
yeah,
I've never fallen in love with something so much as working in a garden centre and running it and providing plants into the community the way we are. And you've
yeah.
just taken that next step up. Well done,
Oh,
Sue.
we're lucky. Take
It's
care, Joe.
been wonderful over 30 years watching you develop into where you are now, and it's just fantastic. Take care,
Thank
Sue. I'll
you.
see you next week.
I look forward to it, Joe. Enjoy your day.
Thanks for your time. Bye bye, Sue. Okay, so that was wonderful. Sue's a long-term friend. I think I'm a little bit grayer than Sue is now, but we've both gone through that sort of stage of being young, running garden centres, having families, and now we're just moving on to all sorts of other things. So, yeah, it was a great conversation. Let's get back to some more question and answers. Let's see if I can't answer a whole lot more for you today. So we're first of all we're heading off to Heidelberg Heights in Victoria, and Lisa has a picture attached with her Tahitian lime is losing most of its leaves in the past couple of weeks. One small branch is starting to die, and it's suffering from root rot. Is it suffering from root rot? She's saying, and what should I do to save it? It has a couple of small fruits and some flower buds, and should I remove them all? I would be inclined to at this point when your plant. I think there was a photo. There we go. You can see it. I would be taking out any of the dead branches, and I would be pruning that up a little bit, and certainly taking the fruit off it. What I would suggest also is that you put it into a much bigger pot. I think what I'm looking at is a 255 or maybe a 300 ml pot. I think it's a little bit smaller than a 300. I think you need to put it no less than a 300 ml pot. Excuse me. And I would also put it into some new soil. But also, if you're in Heidelberg, It's pretty cold in Victoria at the moment, and citrus don't particularly like the cold. So let's put it somewhere where where it's safer from the weather, and keep it out of the cold. And you might find that that's a lot better for you. Okay, so Talia's in Perth. How can I grow my fiddle leaf back from the stem? There's only leaves at the top. Fiddle leaves are really hard things to grow. Look, once a fiddle leaf has dropped its leaves, it's not easy to grow them back. It can take 2 to 3 years before you've got leaves back on those areas. It can be from a number of things. It can be from uh, too much sun, not enough fertilizer, too much fertilizer, and too much water and not enough water. So light as well. If it's inside, not enough light will do it for you. So you really need to work out what you've got happening there with your fiddle leaf, and don't expect it to come back very soon. I tried cutting mine off and did worse damage to it. So it's patience, or put that one somewhere where it can heal and come back and get some new leaves on it in the next couple of years. And in the meantime, go down to your garden centre and buy yourself a new one. So, all right, Talia, good luck with that one. And we're still in Perth. I'm going to send a picture also. And I grew this coleus from a cutting. Well done. It was beautiful, and I decided to put it into a larger pot 3 weeks ago. I gave it some slow release fertilizer, and since then it's been looking very sad. The fertilizer was an all-purpose one. It's getting a fair bit of wind where it's been placed. Could this be the issue? Look, it's not going to like the wind. You're quite right. I would be taking that out of the wind. Make sure that the plant isn't overwatered. So lift it off the ground, give it good aeration, and make sure that the root system is not blocking the drainage holes at the bottom, so that the moisture that it does require will flow through and not rot the roots. I would suggest that it's the wind is probably going to cause it. So cause a lot of damage to it. So put it into an area where you can give it some shelter. And I think you'll find that should come back. It's not going to like the wind with the cold and overwatering. That's going to do it damage really quickly. But well done. Coleuses are gorgeous plants. Okay, now Lincoln is in Sydney in New South Wales. And will my succulents be okay in the cold? What should I do to keep them warm? Well, if your succulents are in pots, I suggest that you move them in under a patio, move them somewhere where they're warmer. If you're living in a part of Sydney that gets a frost, then I would be inclined to keep an eye out for the frost and cover the pots with something like an old sheet or some shade cloth or something like that the night of that. The other thing you can do with your plants is you can feed it with a seaweed solution. Sea Sol is one that probably most of you will have seen or heard of. So if you could give it a dose of Sea Sol, that will certainly help it. But if they're in the ground, I guess keeping mulch around the soil to keep the soil warmer would be the way to do it. And I guess if there's frost coming, cover them like you would in a pot also. But they should be okay. There's a lot of succulents that will take the colder weather also. Back to Perth, and James is asking, where is best to plant my hydrangeas in a garden? I've tried on the north-facing area of the garden, and that seems always to die, even though I always make sure they have water and shade. Well, James, hydrangeas do need water. They need a well-drained soil, which most of us in Perth have, and so keeping the water up to them. But certainly I wouldn't be putting them on a north or a west side, even an east side. If you're in an area like us in Guildford, on the east side, we get a massive amount of hot wind coming through, and the hot wind will damage them. They'll dry them out as well. So you're probably better to look at either the east or the south side of your house. Yes, they want light, but they don't need a lot of hot sun. In fact, they don't want hot sun. So try the other side. I tend to grow mine in pots, and when they're looking their best, I bring them out and put them near the coffee table where I'm going to have a coffee with a friend or something. Or I put them away when I've had to prune them down and when they've got no leaves on them. So pots or east or south side is best. So we're off to Townsville in Queensland, and Rachel has asked, I have raised planters, which I've planted Myrrheas in. They grew well for 2 years, then started dying back in areas. Eventually they had to be removed as parts died all the way to the base. We pulled them out and replanted Myrrhea, and 2 years later they did the same thing. We were told it's the soil, but some of the ones are still growing healthy with dead branches. If it's the soil, how do we test for a fungal issue? Well, we'll start at the end of that sentence. The fungal issue you can normally see by generally black spots on a leaf or marks on a leaf anyway. If you have none of that, you probably don't have a fungal issue. If your pot is well drained, you probably don't have a fungal issue either. Take some leaves down. If you think you have, grab some leaves off the plants that are still alive, take them down to a garden centre and get them to have a look at them, or send them in to us and we can have a look at those. But they're more likely to be a couple of other things. You really need to plant a Myrrhea. My Myrrhea, which I have on my north-facing fence, north-facing fence on the south side of it. It grows extremely well in that area, and it's in the ground. But it also grows to 4 metres. So I would suggest that if you're going to grow a Myrrhea in a pot, and I've seen it successfully done in a pot no less than 400 metres wide for its root system. So if your plants, and it doesn't say what size pot you've got them in, but even in a larger pot, they don't necessarily grow, especially if you're in Townsville. I imagine they almost grow like weeds in Townsville. But what you have got is you don't need to move away from Myrrheas, but you can start by planting something like the hippi. So it's Myrrhea hippi, and it's a dwarf form. So it has the same shape and same size leaf as the normal growing one, but it only grows to about hip high, which for me is around about a metre. And I've got some hippis, and they grow to about 1.2, 1.3 metres at the most. So that can work out really well for you by having a smaller plant and a smaller root system. They'll grow in pots much easier, but you'll still get that fabulous scent and that wonderful shrub. I think they're a beautiful, well-used shrub. The other one is Minimin. So it's the very small one that grows up to only a metre. It can take 5 years to do that. So it's a very slow-growing one. So I perhaps wouldn't use that in a pot. It's not going to happen as fast as what you probably want it to. So hopefully that gives you some ideas, and you can still grow Myrrheas, but maybe more successfully and stop wasting your money. Okay, so hey, it's Tyson. Hi, Tyson, and Tyson is from Baronia. Can I please plant my cabbage Chinese Nagoka F1 seeds in my garden bed, and do I have any tips? You can plant them in your garden bed, Tyson. Chinese cabbage is one of the fastest growing vegetables in your garden, so they're fabulous, and you can grow them all year round, but you need to start by propagating those. If you're sowing seed, you would sow that at the very end of winter, if not wait until spring becomes a little bit warmer. If you're going to plant them into seed raising mix and raise them and then transplant them into your garden, I would probably be doing that in autumn, and then keep them in a warm spot until later in the year when it warms up and you put those summer vegetables into your garden. Nice plant, really great tasting. So give it a go, Tyson. I hope it works well for you. Patsy's in Adelaide, and Patsy wanted to know, hi, my lemon tree planted in the front yard is dropping all of its leaves. Is this normal? No, it's not normal. It can happen. It's quite a common thing that can happen, but it's not normal. So in Adelaide at this time of the year, you might find that it's too cold for it, and so it's just dropping its leaves because of that. I'd be inclined to give it a spray of sea salt, which will help it, and maybe even something like Drought Shield, which will balance out the cells, the water cells in your plant, and will give it a much better chance of living through the colder weather. Because I don't know where in Adelaide you are, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure where the clay in Adelaide is, but I'm fairly sure there's an awful lot of clay in your city, clay soil. And if that's the case, if you've got it planted into clay, you really need to bring it out of the clay and lift it so that it's more well drained. Too much water in a citrus will certainly make it drop its leaves. Not enough fertilizer also. It likes a good amount of minerals. So get yourself a fertilizer that's got a balance of minerals, some good microbial activity in it, and a good amount of the micro minerals as well. And that should help it. Short of that, just it's obviously in full sun, which is what it needs. I think it might be the cold and perhaps some fertilizer.
So Paul, middle of winter, pruning time, particularly for fruit trees. I've got a couple of real big fellas at home that need the big job.
Big job. All right, so still does have an extensive range of battery-powered chainsaws, starting at the MSA 120C, which is the little baby of the range with a 12-inch chain, up to the MSA 220, which you can put a 16-inch chain on.
Right.
So great products, exceptionally well priced, and again, works extremely well.
Okay, so that's the brake taken off, so now the machine will work, and that's with the brake engaged, so nothing's going to turn.
That's right.
And what's the story with
So this is a
adjustment?
quick chain adjuster. So obviously, quite common to lose your spanner to adjust the chain, or you simply over tighten the chain.
Yep.
So this here will allow you to adjust the chain without the spanner, but more importantly, it's very hard to over tension the chain. So again, it's just quite a simple, effective measure to adjust the chain and also to take the side cover off. Again, it's quick and easy, and
Yep.
you won't have any hassles doing that, mate.
Beautiful. Now, this one looks like a more powerful machine.
Yep, so that one's the MSA 220. So that one currently is the most powerful battery chainsaw on the market. There is a bigger one coming, but for the meantime, the MSA 220 is that saw, 16-inch bar, and it does also take the APS 300 battery. Does work extremely well. And again,
Right.
quick chain adjuster.
Now I'm intrigued by this little fella here. That's an arborist's chainsaw.
Yep, hit nail on the head there. The MSA 161 is an arborist saw. Very lightweight, again, designed for that Pacific arborist market. 2 hands on the chainsaw always. Chain brake, still standard practice, and it takes the APS battery, same as what's in the MSA 220.
Well, I think I've made my decision. I'm going back to number one.
Number one, easy done.
That's for me.
Let's go.